Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Beyond Fulfillment Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Goulas of EasyDC 3PL. And this week, my guest is resilience and well-being corporate trainer, Yasmina Lyons. Welcome, Yasmina.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you very much.
Yeah, appreciate you taking the time.
No
If
wor-
you could, for everyone, could you just walk us through your business journey up until where you are now?
Yeah, it's quite a journey, but I'll walk you through it. So business journey really, I think the very beginning started when I left school. So I left school quite young, at 14 years old. And from the age of 16, I dipped into, like selling things online, selling things on eBay. So that's really where I got my first taste of that kind of entrepreneurial spirit, so to say. Um, and then later on, went back to university. I got all my degrees and things like that in psychology, neuroscience. And then you would think that I would go into that kind of pathway of going into something more academic, but I started a aromatherapy and perfume business at
Oh,
that point. Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Okay. And so is that something you're still doing?
It's not something I'm still doing. So I started that when I was about 25. So I'm 32 now. And then I grew that, scaled that, and then exited it in 2021 now. And then once I exited it, then after that, I sold it on. And then I went back to my psychology and neuroscience roots and went into resilience and well-being corporate training.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right. So you left school at 14. So is it because here in the States you have to be at least 16 to drop out of school. So it's okay to do that in the UK, 14?
Not really. Not really. But the way it was kind of not disguised, so to say, but it was like school just didn't work for me at the time. But I think it was more so than just school. Like, I had a lot of things going on at home. Everything was just a bit rocky, so I couldn't really focus at school. Plus, I felt like it didn't really, what's the word? It didn't stimulate that creative side of me. So it's like I felt too kind of constrained in school. I had questions that wouldn't get answered, and I didn't really enjoy the topics very much, apart from maths, that's the only one. So then when I just stopped really turning up to my lessons, I was a bit of a rebel at that point. I just stopped turning up to my lessons. Then the path that was then laid down for me was to go to college early and finish my qualifications there. But then when you went to the college, they didn't really show interest whether you showed up or not. So it was like on paper, I've gone to college, but really I didn't.
Okay. Did
Yeah.
did you always have that entrepreneurial desire as far as like you mentioned starting stuff online and doing eBay? Did you always have a desire to have your own business?
Yeah, I think so from very young. But when I was younger, it didn't manifest, right? Or I didn't, that's not how it manifested in my mind. Like, I want to be an entrepreneur. It was, I just didn't, I couldn't pinpoint a route and a career that would suit me. So I always thought that I would probably start my own thing because I didn't really have the understandings at that point of what an entrepreneur was like or self-employed and things like that. I think I just wanted to be my own boss. That was all it was.
It sounds like you didn't like being told what to do or just kind of boxed into maybe with the school system, how they want you to learn.
Exactly that. So I think it sparked from there, and I think because of the kind of background that I came from as well. Both of my parents, working parents, so I just wanted more from life, and I wanted just to be more expansive. At the time, like I think you hit the nail on the head. I just felt kind of like boxed in and constrained. Um, so I just wanted to be more expansive, be more free, and kind of follow my own path and basically like trail my own way to a certain extent.
Okay.
Yeah.
And and then with the aromatherapy company, so what was that process like getting it off the ground and scaling it to where you could make a successful exit?
Okay, so that one, that I fell into that by accident. So what happened is when I left university, I had my youngest daughter. She was like 6 months at the time. So I had her in my last year of university, already had a daughter at that point who was about 4 years old. And I just didn't want to send her to nursery. I wanted to stay at home with her. But I kind of in previously from when I was younger, I'd had that experience of buying and selling online. So I thought, oh, let me just go back to that, but let me do something I like. So it was more like aromatherapies for the house and things like that. So I was just like pretty much buying like wholesale and then reselling online on Amazon mainly. That was the first one. But then what happened is I started making a lot of content around it, of course, to build sales. And then when I was making content on Instagram and TikTok, it just started going viral. Like it just blew up, basically. And then at that moment where it blew up, then I pivoted into perfumes as well. And before you know it, it was like I was learning on the go what it meant to run a business, to employ, to have a warehouse, to, customer service. It was just literally coming like it was coming at me, but I didn't intentionally do it. It's like I just found something that worked. If you understand what I mean, from necessity, from wanting to be with my kids at home. That's really what it was.
So that was the main intent and the desire is to have this income that supported you being able to stay home with your kids.
Yeah.
And then just blowing up on social media kind of forced you into really starting a business on the go so you could scale with the momentum you had.
Yeah, yeah. But there was a point, I think there was one point where it was it was around no, not lockdown time. It was around 2016. And I just there was like there was a point where like in my finances where I really needed that income, where it was like literally it was like my back was against the wall, all the bridges were burned, all the boats were burned, and it was like I need to make this happen. So that's where I got pushed into social media, because before that I was just selling online on Amazon, right? So I never really went down the social media route. So when I went down the social media route, I started building it around my personal brand. So I would pretty much sell it myself in video format. And I think that's what kind of hit the nail on the head. It was that personal interaction with the end customer, explaining and things like that. And then once I'd done that, and it was like I just done that to kind of, it was I done that to be for it to be a means to an end for the financial problem I was having at that point. But then it ended up blowing up.
And did it happen like right away in terms of like your success on social media and Instagram?
It happened after about, I would say, between about 8 to 12 months between those times. But
Okay.
when I say I was posting like all the time. I was on lives, I was posting, it was just non-stop. I was flooding those channels. First Instagram and then TikTok, I was just flooding those channels with that content.
Okay. But
Yeah.
even with that type of volume, it took consistently, at least 8 months or so for you to really get that viral moment.
Yeah, definitely. It took about, for one of my first videos to go viral, it took, I think it was like after about 6 months, one of my first videos went viral. And then I could, it was like, then I saw the power of social media, because when your video goes viral, then it's like the first time my video went viral, the website just like, I couldn't even believe my eyes. The orders that were coming in, it was just flooding. And then I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, this is what happens. Like, this is the power of social media. So that was it. But I think really the key in that was the going live. I think that's what it was. It was going live so often.
Okay. And when you say all the time, is this like every single day or multiple times per day, that type of thing?
No, it wasn't every single day. It was probably about 3 or 4 days a week, but it was for 2 hours minimum.
Mm. Okay.
So it was a lot of time. It was a lot of time on live, yeah.
Sure. Absolutely. Okay. All right. So you scaled that, you
Mm.
exited, and then you went to this is where I came to know you as far as what you're posting a lot on LinkedIn with the neuroscience and the psychology
Yeah.
content. Can you talk about like why that's such a passion of yours?
Yeah. So, okay. So with my journey, like how I think leaving school so young, right? At that time, it was almost like the odds were stacked against me to a certain extent. My parents were worried. I think a lot of people just ripped me off. Like it was just, there was a lot of things going on at that time. Like I said, I was a rebel. I just wouldn't really listen to anybody. So at that point, even for myself, like my future kind of looked bleak to a certain extent. And then when I was 16, I moved out as well. I forgot to mention that point. So I was just like, it was like I was on my own road at that point. And it's funny how at the time, I just thought I fell into psychology and neuroscience. But actually, in those years, it was like I had to build up so much like coping mechanisms, resilience, and just, those core kind of ingredients to get me through that, and then get me through university, and then get me through business, and then get me through entrepreneurship, and then get me through a cell. So it was like I almost mastered it without realizing it, plus studying it. So when I sold my business in 2021, I think it's at that point where you think to yourself, so what's my purpose? So it's like I went back to that question. So what is my purpose? And I had a mentor, and he used to always say to me, your success is in your story. And I pondered on that for a long time. And I thought to myself, it's one of these questions that I've heard people speak about on podcasts and things. And it goes like this. It says, if you was given like all the money in the world, you didn't have any financial worries, what would you do, and what would you do for free? And for me, it's what I'm doing. So it's teaching people about resilience. It's teaching people about psychology. It's teaching people and about how the brain works, right? Because once you can understand how the brain works, then you understand how you function and how your thoughts function on a day-to-day basis. And then you can start to have control over yourself, over your thought processes, over your reactions, over how you regulate yourself. It's just it's just such a foundational, it's such a like powerful skill to learn and have, whatever you do in your life.
If you're like millions of companies out there today, credit card processing and receiving payments on time in full has been nothing but a headache and a hassle month after month after month. Run Payments is here to change that for good. Run is a tech company and a payments consultancy, not just a processor. They make it a blessing and not a burden to move money in your business and save on the processing fees while doing so. The guys over at Run give you the tools and the expertise you need to properly accept and monetize payments. An entire collection of out-of-the-box payment platforms, gateways, and point-of-sale terminals, all under one commerce ecosystem, what they call the Runverse. Get in touch today with the code EasyDCP1, and they'll be ready to talk shop and run together with you. I totally agree. And that's clearly not something taught in school.
Yeah.
And it's and particularly in entrepreneurship too, that's something you really, oftentimes people are, on this journey, they're confused, they're trying to scale their company, they're wearing multiple hats, they're dealing with stress, financial issues, family, and a host of other things, right? So, that's, I mean, from someone that does that for a living and teaches people, why do you think resilience is so important specifically to an entrepreneur?
uh, because it's the epitome of our journey, of an entrepreneur's journey. It's the epitome of it, because look, you can never with the journey of entrepreneurship, there's always going to be like those setbacks, those like unpredicted circumstances, right? There's always going to be change. There's always going to be times that you need to pivot. There's going to be times where you need to be adaptable. There's going to be times where you still need to inspire others despite things going on in the background. So that's where self-regulation and self-awareness would come in. So all of those things, if you don't have a resilient foundation to adapt, recover, and continue, then you're just basically like a hot mess. So But yeah, that's it. You're not a good leader. uh you're going to be making irrational decisions based off of emotion, not based off of, logic, and like the things that you should be focusing on. It's just, and you won't have good coping mechanisms as well, because that's another thing. Entrepreneur, like with the entrepreneurial journey, and entrepreneurs, like, we burn ourselves out like so much and so easily. It affects our families, like, uh when we're pursuing something, it's like sometimes we can get so narrow-minded that everything else, because it connects to so much more than just, oh, things going well. Most of the time it connects to our self-worth, it connects to our accomplishments, it goes back to, like, that Maslow hierarchy of needs. It just connects to a lot, like, internally. So you need to know how to be resilient in those times. And resiliency is not always, just grit and hard work. Sometimes resiliency is pausing, connecting with your community around you, or people that your loved ones, your spouses, and things like that. And it's actually like taking a break so you can rest and recover and continue going on.
Okay. So
Yeah.
now, one thing that you've become known for is the seminars that you do, and one of them is called Rewire to Thrive. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you talk about the work you're doing in terms of the seminars and the different work you do with entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so right now I do some one-to-one work with entrepreneurs, but the heavy focus is in corporations. Now, the reason why I wanted to bring it to corporations so much is because I felt like that's where I could make a bigger impact, in that space, in terms of thinking and changing the thinking and changing how we do things, right? But Rewire to Thrive is it's something that's not like anything else out there, like when it comes to resiliency, because I feel like it touches on all points of resiliency. So we have emotional resiliency, we have psychological resiliency we address in there, we have biological, which is just mind-blowing, because there's so much to learn about our bodies, like, itself, right? And how it's actually made to be resilient. It's not made to be like fragile. I think there's a misconception that we're fragile human beings and things like that. We're actually made for resiliency, to adapt and change and things like that. We, at the moment, I've introduced like a digital wellness part of it. And then, so I said emotional, psychological, mental, and then we have spiritual as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what those seminars, like, is that typically over the course of a weekend or?
So they're not really seminars. So what they are, they're either keynotes or they're workshops.
Oh, okay. So you go into different corporations and train them for like a day and have the whole workshop where you touch on these different areas?
Aspect. Yeah. So it's like a 360-degree kind of look at resilience, how it plays a part in, like, every point of our lives, every touch points of our lives. And even like with spiritual resilience, I'll say this, it's not that you have to be a spiritual person to tap into that spiritual resilience. It's just, and research shows that when we have something that we believe in, it could be anything, it could be religion, it could just be something like a kind of power or source that's greater than us. When we have that, those people tend to be more resilient, because it's like they can just pass it over. They can pass over that challenge. They can pass over, that worry, so to say, or, that change that's happening.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, Now I wanted to go over a couple of the posts that you made recently, and I really like this one where you were talking about resilience, and you said it's not really about bouncing back, but it's about bouncing forward because it's
Mm.
really important to learn from your mistakes.
It's exactly that.
Can you talk,
So
yeah, a little bit more about that?
yeah, so okay, so with again, I think that a lot of people have a conception that to be resilient is just about, hard grit and just working through and, piercing your head through those hard times and bouncing back. It's like it's something that goes usually with resiliency. However, it's not really about bouncing back, because when you take the lessons and the wisdom that you've learned from maybe sometimes that adversity, then essentially you're bouncing forward because you're not the same person, right? So it's like you're not just going like back from that adversity and coming back to where you was before. You've gained something from that. So now you've evolved. Like you're going forward. So you're bouncing forward. So that's essentially what it is.
Do you see, because this is something I see with others, is in terms of if you're going through a journey and you're having some challenges and you like that mindset of grit and you always got to bounce back. Do you see where entrepreneurs maybe don't give themselves enough credit for how far they've come, and maybe even if they're in the middle of a challenging time, despite how far they've come or how much their business has done, they still are always maybe not satisfied and in turns beat themselves up about it?
100%, definitely. I can relate to that. Can you relate to that?
Yeah, yeah, 100%, right? Because typically, like high performance, goal driven, you want what you want, you're willing to kind of do whatever it takes, in your own power to make it happen. And then sometimes if it's not how you envisioned it, you start, it's almost your mind starts attacking you like you failed.
Yeah, and the goalpost moves as well. So I feel like for that, something that's really been helpful for me is, and it's going to sound so cliche, and I know everybody says, oh, just journal, but journaling really does help. Just every minute, every day, I mean, not every minute, every day, 10 minutes a day, journal for the mere fact to document your journey. Because the minute I started doing this, and when I advise clients to do this, it's like then you have like this viewpoint, right? It increases that self-awareness of yourself as well. So it's like you now have a bird's eye view of how far you've come, what you've had to deal with, also how you've dealt with it sometimes. Sometimes it can be good, sometimes it can be bad. You can learn from it, or you can use it for next time, that challenge or difficulty, adversity comes up. But it really, really does help. And a lot of the times, like, we don't have time for this. It's just like, I'm just happy to get into my bed at the end of the day. But taking that time out is an investment in yourself, and is an investment in that. I think it's like your long-term happiness, to be honest. Because especially with the entrepreneurial journey, and especially I will say this as well, like I don't think there's a lot of support for entrepreneurs in terms of, they're seen as kind of like, or we're seen as have it all together and just take everything on our backs. But the support systems are not really there. Like we don't talk about mental health enough when we talk about entrepreneurship, but it's probably one of the most mentally excruciating things you can put yourself through at times.
I agree. Yeah, for sure. For sure. And yeah, mental health is definitely an issue and definitely not talked about enough for entrepreneurs. Another one I really liked of yours that got deep into like the neuroscience aspect is it talked about comparing yourself to others and how you've had that issue where you realize it's not your highest self, but it's really the ego and the need for survival that's making those comparisons. And when you realize that, you're able to step back and just see those thoughts for what they are.
Yeah, yeah. So all right, so the foundation of that person and the foundation for that thinking, right? And again, like sometimes I think to myself, I should just open up a school, because this stuff is not taught, and it needs to be taught, because we need to have this knowledge of ourselves, just to be, whatever you do, to be able to navigate and understand life better, right? Because the foundation of that is that we've been like kind of sophisticated modern human beings as we are today for 10,000 years. Now, when you compare that to the 2 million years that we've existed beforehand, we can understand that our brains, right, are still very primitive. They haven't caught up to like our modern day ways of thinking, of being, of interacting. So therefore, when you're, on social media, or it could be at work, or it could be in real life, and you're comparing yourself to somebody else, what that's actually doing, that's sparking the left side of your brain, which is where the ego basically resides, lives. And it's sparking that side because the ego compares, like its language is survival, again, because it's still very primitive. Its language is survival, and it compares itself to somebody else because it feels like it's fighting over scarce resources. Now, when you're looking at somebody flashing their car or going on holiday, you're not sitting there thinking about, oh, my ego is comparing scarce resources and all, and all this type of stuff. You're not doing that, are you? But that's essentially what's happening. So yeah, that's it. So, and I feel like once you have an understanding of that, then you can better understand it, and you better understand those feelings that come up when you find yourself comparing, which is 100% normal. Everybody does it because everybody has an ego, and everybody has that left hemisphere of their brain, which is very, logical thinking and things like that. Which goes back to the point of why I said this stuff needs to be taught in schools, basically.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So what's next for you in 2024 as far as your business?
So for me, continuing corporate workshops, that's a massive passion for me. However, I plan to do a TEDx this year. Also plan to do more speaking engagements. I think that's what it is. And I really want to author a book. So I think that'll probably come in the second half of the year. Start looking at like writing a book and things like that. So that's the plan for this year.
Okay. And if people want to get in touch with you and find out more about your work, what's the best way they can do that?
So the most active channel that I'm on right now is LinkedIn, as we met. So that's just LinkedIn and then Yasmina Lyons. And my website, Yasmina Lyons, also email, contact@Yasmina Lyons. Everything is pretty much, I was lucky with my name, nobody really had it. So everything is Yasmina Lyons.
Okay. And we'll put that info down below. So if you want to get in touch with Yasmina, her info's there. And yeah, we'd like to thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Dave. Thank you. Really enjoyed it.
All right. And we will see you next time.